The broadcast began with no sound, only the shimmer of burning continents reflected in the eyes of 100 alien dignitaries. The Galactic Empire's war chamber was a cathedral of glass and metal, orbiting a blue-white star. Inside, highborn commanders of 20 species observed Earth's surface through holographic feeds, watching as dust and smoke rolled across oceans. 3 million humans, gone in 8 minutes. The Emperor of Zytherion called it a measured correction. His voice carried the calm arrogance of a species that had never known regret. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence wasn't grief, it was the smug quiet of predators after a kill. Somewhere among the ranks, an admiral with translucent scales raised a claw. "They'll sue for peace," he said. "Primitive species always do." Laughter rippled through the chamber, the kind of laughter that echoed when no one feared consequences. At the far end of the hall, a single human stood. His uniform was slightly wrinkled, his shoes unpolished. He held a chipped mug that smelled faintly of earth coffee. Ambassador James Kepler, representative of a dying world, had been invited to witness the resolution of hostilities. He looked impossibly calm, almost bored. When the Emperor gestured to him, Kepler bowed with human awkwardness. 3 million dead, the Emperor said, his voice rolling like thunder across the hall. A reminder of proportion. You understand proportion, yes? Kepler smiled. Perfectly, Your Majesty. Though on Earth, we usually count proportion in heartbeats, not bodies. The room shifted, alien faces turning in curiosity. Some whispered translations. Others sneered. Kepler sipped his coffee, seemingly immune to the weight of all that hatred pressing toward him. You misunderstand, the Emperor said, feigning patience. This is mercy. We could have erased your species entirely. Kepler nodded as though considering a grocery list. Mercy. Right. We have a word for that too. It usually comes before something worse. Laughter died instantly. The human's tone hadn't changed, but the undercurrent carried something ancient, like the rumble of a storm beneath calm water. A Saurian general leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Ambassador, the Empire expects immediate surrender. Your planet's defenses are obsolete. Our strike was educational. Kepler tilted his head. Oh, we've been educated plenty. History's a cruel professor. He set the mug down on the polished floor. The sound of ceramic touching metal rang out like a tiny bell, an oddly reverent sound amid the cold machinery. You'll forgive Earth if we take a day or two to process the lesson. A day or two? The general hissed. Yes, Kepler replied. To tidy up the bodies, write a few songs, maybe send a thank-you note. A few delegates hissed or barked. The Emperor's expression hardened. Ambassador, this attitude will not serve you. The Empire does not tolerate insolence. Of course, Kepler said lightly. We wouldn't want to offend anyone's sense of superiority. That would be dangerous. He turned toward the exit, boots clicking quietly across the marble floor. A dozen security drones followed his movement. No one stopped him. Perhaps they believed his politeness meant powerlessness. Perhaps they couldn't imagine a human walking away from humiliation without breaking. As the doors hissed shut behind him, the Emperor exhaled slowly. He's broken, he murmured. That's the sound of defeat. But deep below the surface of Earth, something stirred. Miles beneath the Pacific, sensors that hadn't blinked in decades came alive. Command stations buried in old oceanic trenches began transmitting on silent frequencies. Entire sections of the planet's energy grid flickered, shifting into patterns invisible to alien satellites. Somewhere in the dark, automated launch silos hummed. The oceans began to glow faintly, not fire, but reflections of ignition systems waking under pressure. Up above, Kepler's small diplomatic vessel detached from the station. From the outside it was an unimpressive thing. Scratched hull, human letters fading on the side. Inside, however, the ship pulsed with encrypted data streams. Kepler unbuttoned his collar and spoke quietly into a small recorder. Phase 1 confirmed. They took the bait. Initiate blackout. Earth's transmission hubs went dark one by one, like candles snuffed in a church. Civilian chatter ceased. Broadcasts froze mid-sentence. Not even distress signals remained. To the watching empire, it looked like paralysis. To Earth, it was the sound of preparation. Hours passed. Imperial analysts argued about the silence. Some claimed the humans were mourning. Others, that their primitive systems had collapsed. The Emperor called it predictable despair. He issued orders to begin the next phase of occupation. But on a smaller screen, one the Emperor never saw, Kepler's face appeared again, faint and flickering. He addressed an unseen audience, his voice steady. They think we've gone quiet because we're broken. Let them. Sometimes the only way to be heard in this galaxy is to stop speaking. He closed the transmission and watched the stars slide past. His reflection looked older, lines carved by fatigue rather than fear. He whispered to himself, "We warn them not to wake the ones who build in silence." In the Empire's war room, an aide approached the Emperor with a datapad. "Sire, the human representative's ship has gone off-grid. No signal trail." "Insignificant," the Emperor said, waving it away. "They are emotional creatures. They'll come crawling soon." Still, something unsettled him. He glanced again at the live feed of Earth. The fires were dimming. No smoke, no movement, no panic. Just the cold curve of oceans under starlight. For the first time, the Emperor noticed how still the planet looked, like an animal holding its breath. Meanwhile, Kepler's vessel entered low orbit, merging with a swarm of dark satellites invisible to alien scanners. Each one bore a single emblem, a stylized human eye within a circle. Aegis Division. The ambassador reached for a console and pressed his thumb against the screen. Authorization codes streamed in red across his eyes. A mechanical voice confirmed. "All deep silo systems operational. Awaiting command authority." Kepler hesitated for a moment, then whispered, "Not yet. Let them laugh a little longer." He leaned back in his chair and looked toward Earth. Lights flickered faintly beneath the cloud cover. An entire planet breathing in rhythm, preparing. At the Galactic War Chamber, debates devolved into mockery. Alien commentators broadcast confident messages across the stars. Humanity is finished. The Terran species will enter compliance. Peace restored. Every declaration echoed through the Empire's networks, proud and complacent. And then, at precisely the same second across every frequency, their screens flickered. A single image appeared, an old photograph, grainy and monochrome, a blue planet seen from orbit. Beneath it, a phrase in English letters scrolled slowly. "We heard you." No voice accompanied it. No sound, no threat. Just those three words repeating until systems crashed. The Emperor rose, trembling, unable to explain the chill creeping through his veins. "What does it mean?" he demanded. No one answered. Above Earth, Kepler closed his eyes as the stars blinked overhead. Somewhere behind him, a quiet hum built. Low, steady, patient. He smiled faintly, almost sadly, and murmured to the empty cabin. "A moment of silence before the storm." And far below, deep beneath the Pacific, the first silo doors began to open. The imperial capital glittered like a jeweled crown around its star, every surface polished to reflect its own grandeur. Towers of living crystal pulsed with neural light, broadcasting victory hymns over the subspace channels. To the Empire, the silence of Earth meant submission. To Ambassador James Kepler, seated across from three alien generals, it meant the beginning of the end. The chamber was humid. The air perfumed with oils meant to soothe reptilian lungs. Kepler had brought his own smell, the faint bitter steam of black tea. The aliens regarded the cup like a weapon. None of them understood why a defeated species insisted on rituals of comfort. "You humans," said General Threx, his mouth folding over razor teeth, "celebrate defeat with drinks. Curious." Kepler smiled faintly. "Where I come from, General, we drink to everything. Birth, death, bad days, taxes. Tea's just cheaper than therapy." A ripple of confusion spread across the table. Translators rendered the words unevenly. One delegate thought therapy was a form of weaponized gas. Kepler didn't correct them. Misunderstanding was camouflage. The Emperor's advisor, a tall being of translucent flesh whose organs shimmered like fish in water, leaned forward. Ambassador, our intelligence indicates your species is reorganizing. Should we interpret this as resistance? Kepler stirred his tea slowly, watching the reflection of the aliens in the liquid surface. Reorganizing? I suppose. We tidy up after disasters. It's a habit. You blow up our cities, we build better ones. It's how we keep from getting bored. Laughter rolled through the chamber, though it sounded forced. Threx slammed a clawed hand on the table, the impact echoing like a gong. Your insolence is noted. We could erase what remains of your world with a gesture. Kepler raised his eyes, calm and unblinking. Yes, you could. But then you'd never learn what happens afterward. The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. The aliens' eyes darted among themselves. They couldn't tell if the human had just issued a threat or a parable. He broke the tension with a cheerful tone. Now, you mentioned your concerns about reorganization. What is it that frightens you exactly? That we might have teeth under our smiles? Threx bared his own in reply. Predators respect predators, Ambassador. You are not one. Kepler's grin widened, though it never reached his eyes. You're right. We're worse. We're gardeners. You see, we prune things that overgrow. The advisor blinked, unsure if it was a metaphor. He glanced at his data slate, whispering, We've detected no fleet activity, no power surges, no unusual transmissions. They are bluffing. Kepler leaned back in his chair, crossing his legs. Maybe. Or maybe you're not looking in the right direction. We learned a trick from nature. Sometimes the most dangerous things grow underground. He reached for a small case from his coat pocket and opened it. A set of tea bags, neatly labeled, smelling faintly of smoke and soil. He placed one on the table, sliding it toward the Emperor's advisor. You ever try this? Steep it in boiling water. Wait 5 minutes. Tastes like quiet revenge. The advisor recoiled, muttering about toxins. Kepler smiled wider. Suit yourself. The conversation shifted as the aliens struggled to recover their footing. They bombarded him with questions. Requests for resource data, industrial yields, surrender protocols. Kepler answered each with the patience of a man folding napkins. Our mining operations? Oh, modest. Just Mars, Ceres, and the upper mantle of Luna. Defense systems? Strictly ceremonial. We name our cannons after extinct animals. Helps morale. You should see Leviathan. She's a beauty. They thought he was joking. Most humans' humor terrified them. So irrational, so unpredictable. But Kepler wasn't smiling anymore. His voice softened, losing its ironic edge. You know, when I was a child, I saw footage of your empire's first contact ships landing on Europa. They called it the Dawn Pact. Beautiful name. Shame what came after. The advisor's translucent skin pulsed darker. We brought order to chaos. Funny thing about order, Kepler said. It always looks like tyranny from the other side. The chamber lights dimmed as the Empire's intelligence grid synchronized with the conversation, scanning Kepler's words for encoded signals. None found. The system reported harmless cultural dialogue. He finished his tea and set the cup down gently. You really should fix your sensors, he said under his breath. They hum off-key. No one caught the remark. But the floor under his chair vibrated softly, an imperceptible tremor tuned to a frequency that matched the transmission codes of the Aegis network. The signal carried through the floor, up the walls, across the station's orbit, and into the dark between stars. General Threx rose, irritated. Enough of this. Humanity has nothing left to threaten us with. Kepler stood too, meeting the alien's towering height without flinching. That's the thing about threats, General. They're only real when someone believes them. We prefer promises. He buttoned his coat and began walking toward the door. The advisor called after him. Ambassador, if Earth continues its silence, the Emperor will be forced to escalate. Is there no message you wish to send before your world is? Kepler paused at the threshold. Oh, there's a message coming. Just not from me. He left the chamber. Behind him, The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. None could shake the feeling that something unseen had shifted in the air. The advisor reached for the tea bag on the table, sniffed it cautiously, then dropped it into his drink. The scent filled the room, smoky, bitter, unsettling. Hours later, while the generals reviewed their surveillance data, alarms began flashing across the Empire's outer communication grid. Minor outages, nothing alarming, until a pattern emerged. Nodes were failing in perfect synchronization, starting from the sectors nearest to Sol. Inside his private shuttle, Kepler watched the data scroll across his wrist display. He murmured to himself, "Tea's done steeping." His pilot, a silent android with human features too smooth to be real, glanced back. "Transmission ready, sir?" "Not yet," Kepler said. "Let them think we're still talking." He gazed out the viewport at the Empire's shining capital. It was magnificent, a monument built by 1,000 enslaved worlds, glittering with arrogance. "You build palaces of glass," he whispered. "But glass cracks beautifully under pressure." On the planet below, the Emperor was preparing a public address, declaring the success of Operation Compliance. The first words of his speech were still forming when the city lights dimmed for a heartbeat, just long enough for every sensor to register the same anomaly, a phantom signal emanating from the human embassy's last coordinates. In the war chamber, the advisor frowned at his monitors. "Impossible," he muttered. "The transmission is not local, it's bouncing through gravitational fields. That shouldn't." The screens flickered. Across them, an image appeared. A steaming cup of tea on a steel table, faint curls of smoke rising into the dark. Beneath it, 2 words glowed in red. "Checkmate soon." The generals shouted orders. Systems scrambled to isolate the source. No one noticed that the temperature in the room had risen by 2 degrees, the heat of an energy pulse crawling invisibly through the floors, spreading from the point where Kepler's chair had once been. High above, Kepler's shuttle entered stealth orbit, vanishing into the planet's shadow. He poured himself another cup and whispered, "Monsters always forget. Humans drink their tea right before the hunt." The stars around him flickered, as if winking in dark amusement. The first reports came in as whispers through the Empire's vast communication lattice. Missing patrols near Sol, unmanned stations gone dark, trade convoys vanishing between the asteroids. At first, the generals dismissed it as static, a ripple in their flawless machinery. But by the 30th hour, static had become silence, and silence had begun to feel like a noose. Fleet Commander Threx stood in the heart of the Imperial flagship Vigilant Crown, his scaled fingers twitching across holographic screens that refused to obey. "Recalibrate array 4, he barked. The technician stammered that the arrays were fine. It was space itself that wasn't answering back. In that silence, the galaxy seemed to lean closer. Across 1,000 systems, communication buoys flickered with the same impossible image, a single blue marble suspended in darkness. Earth. No message, no sound, just the planet turning slowly as if to remind them it still existed. By the 36th hour, panic had become policy. The Emperor ordered all fleets to converge on Sol, to crush whatever illusion humans were orchestrating. Thousands of warships stretched into formation, like a metallic serpent winding through the void. Their confidence was absolute. Then came the first scream through subspace, the kind that no translator could render, a frequency too human to decode. A deep, resonant pulse followed, rolling across sensors like thunder through bone. Entire fleets blinked off the network in a wave of white light. Instruments shorted. Engines died. When power returned, the warships discovered their escorts were gone, erased without debris, as though the void had swallowed them whole. Threx's second-in-command whispered, "What weapon can do that?" The commander stared at the empty star map. Something that learned from us. Something that waited. Meanwhile, in the war chamber on Zytherion, the Emperor demanded a connection to the human envoy. It came instantly, as if someone had been waiting for the call. Kepler's face appeared. Half-lit, serene, the faint hum of a ship behind him. "Ambassador," the Emperor began, forcing composure. "Your world has violated the truce. You have unleashed unauthorized attacks on Imperial fleets." Kepler's tone was calm, his words precise. No, Your Majesty. We haven't attacked anyone. You're simply colliding with the consequences of your own arrogance. Do not play with words. Kepler interrupted softly. You declared us primitive. We took that as permission to think creatively. The Emperor's jaw clenched. You will stand down, or your planet will be burned to glass. Kepler leaned closer to the camera. You already tried fire. Now you get to see what silence looks like. The connection cut. By the 50th hour, the Empire's strategic web was unraveling. Starports lost control of their drones. Defense grids began targeting their own ships. Artificial intelligences, built with human code borrowed decades earlier, began to broadcast in a forgotten language, Morse. A message repeated in soft beeps, run. On the bridge of Vigilant Crown, Threx watched in horror as Earth's moon, previously a dull satellite, began to fracture along invisible seams. From its surface unfolded armor plates, heat shields, massive rail structures glinting like the ribs of some awakening god. The moon was no moon, it was a fortress. Dozens of other hidden structures came alive. Orbital stations, asteroids turning to reveal mounted cannons, clouds of metallic dust reorganizing into stealth frigates. A technician stammered. How long have they? Long enough, Threx said, his voice a rasp. They built their warships inside myths. Music began to flood every channel. Not a battle march, old recordings from Earth. A low, soulful guitar strumming through static. Then a man's voice, aged and warm. You can run on for a long time. Aliens everywhere froze. None of them understood the words, but something primal in the rhythm made their spines tighten. Fleet sensors picked up thousands of objects rising from Earth's atmosphere. At first they thought missiles, but the trajectories were impossible. Each object corrected itself mid-flight, vanishing into microfold rifts invisible to the naked eye. On board the flagship, the Emperor's image appeared over Threx's bridge. Counterattack. Fire everything you have. The commander obeyed. Beams of plasma and antimatter streaked through the void, slamming into the moon. For a second it worked. The light blazed brilliantly, then faded, absorbed by shimmering fields. The next moment, half the attacking fleet vanished, replaced by expanding rings of gravitational distortion. Ships imploded silently, folding inward as if erased by an unseen hand. Kepler's voice echoed across the Empire's emergency frequency, his tone still courteous. You thought we were children throwing rocks at gods. But gods fall easier than you think. The transmission carried visuals from his ship. Rows of human vessels, each named after an extinct predator, tiger, mako, leviathan, harpy. They moved like coordinated storm fronts, sleek and silent. Kepler continued. We built these in silence, under your occupation satellites, using your own resource quotas. You taught us efficiency. We just applied it to extinction. On the bridge, Threx gripped the railing. You'll destroy yourselves with us. Perhaps, Kepler replied, his voice almost tender. But we've always been fond of mutual destruction. It keeps the math honest. By the 68th hour, the Empire's outer colonies had gone dark. Their suns dimmed, not destroyed but drained. Human devices were extracting energy directly from the stellar cores, fueling something enormous hidden in the void between systems. A message flashed across all surviving networks, written in clear human script. This is not war. This is a correction. The Emperor watched helplessly as every map, every channel, every signal across his dominion filled with a single heartbeat, deep, rhythmic, unrelenting. The sound of an entire species breathing as one. In his private chamber he demanded, "Where is their command ship?" No one knew. No scans could locate it. It was everywhere and nowhere. Some said it was hidden inside gravity wells. Others whispered it was buried in time itself. And then, as if answering his question, the final broadcast began. Kepler's image reappeared, framed by shadow and starlight. Behind him, through the viewport, the burning remnants of an imperial fleet drifted like dying embers. You taught us empire, he said. You showed us cruelty and called it order. We learned. And now we're the best students you ever had. The transmission widened to show hundreds of human ships forming geometric patterns across the void. Energy flared, shaping into a vast, glowing lattice. Kepler's last words came quietly, almost compassionate. You quarantined an animal that learned to live in cages. Now we're breaking them. The lattice ignited, and the stars themselves seemed to recoil. Across the empire, the light dimmed. Communications died. And the silence that followed was not empty, it was expectant. It lasted 72 hours. When sound finally returned, it came as a whisper carried through static, Kepler's voice, faint but smiling. Now, shall we begin? The galaxy burned like an old photograph left too close to a flame. The proud constellations of the Galactic Empire, once unbroken chains of light, now hung in tatters. Communication hubs were silent, their networks hollowed out. Fleets that had ruled half the spiral arm floated dead, motionless against the black. Yet the humans, after 72 hours of unspeakable retaliation, had not advanced. No invasion fleets, no gloating broadcasts, just that unbearable quiet. Emperor Sakar stood before the panoramic glass of his throne chamber, watching the remains of his dominion shimmer, like embers drifting into nothing. His hands trembled not from fear, but disbelief. Empires didn't die this way, without ceremony, without noise. His advisors filled the hall, whispering theories. Some believed the humans had exhausted themselves. Others prayed they had finally relented. The emperor wanted to believe either lie, but the hollow weight in his chest told him something darker waited beyond the silence. When the signal came, it didn't arrive through military channels. It appeared on every screen, every reflective surface, every neural implant in the palace. The hologram of a man in a dark suit, hair unkempt, collar loose, holding a steaming mug of tea, flickered into being. "Good evening, Your Majesty," said Ambassador James Kepler, voice warm as sunlight on a grave. "I trust the quiet has been educational." The Emperor's jaw tightened. "You've killed billions. Do you call that education?" Kepler tilted his head, eyes full of strange sorrow. "We didn't kill anyone, Your Majesty. We merely removed your ability to harm. The rest was arithmetic." "Arrogant ape," the Emperor hissed. "You believe you can end an empire that has lasted 10,000 years?" Kepler smiled faintly. "I don't believe it. I've already done it." The chamber erupted in static. Every light dimmed, replaced by ghostly projections of stars vanishing one by one. Imperial systems going dark in real time. Advisors scrambled to shut the feed down, but the hologram seemed woven into the air itself. Kepler continued as if lecturing in a classroom. "Operation Final Courtesy," he said gently, "was conceived during the first peace accords. You may remember them, the banquets, the gifts of art, those quaint little human exhibits you allowed across your worlds. We brought you paintings, sculptures, architecture, beautiful things you didn't understand." The Emperor's eyes widened. "Artifacts of peace." "Containers," Kepler corrected. "Quantum bombs disguised as culture. It's a human talent, to hide violence inside beauty." Panic swept through the chamber. Advisors shouted orders, summoning engineers, activating shields. But across the empire, from the glittering spires of the capital to the barren mining moons, the artifacts stirred. Each sculpture, each glass mosaic, each museum relic began to vibrate with a pulse older than stars. Kepler's hologram stepped closer, his tone still polite. "You destroyed 3 million lives and called it proportionate. We call this symmetrical." The Emperor lunged toward the hologram, claws swiping through air. "You're mad. You'll destroy the galaxy." Kepler's expression softened. "Not the galaxy, Your Majesty. Just the part that forgot what empathy felt like." The first detonations were silent, perfect implosions of light. From a distance, they resembled new stars being born. Worlds vanished without sound, their atmospheres folding inward before dispersing into ash and plasma. Entire fleets were erased in fractions of a second. Inside the palace, the air itself shuddered. Gravity wavered. Windows cracked under invisible pressure. The Emperor stumbled, clutching the railing as the horizon outside melted into colorless light. "What have you done?" he gasped. Kepler's voice lowered to a whisper. "We gave you one final courtesy, sire. We let you watch." Behind him, the command bridge of the Eidolon, Earth's hidden flagship, glowed with spectral blue. Officers stood at silent stations, their faces solemn. No one cheered, no one smiled. Victory was a word they no longer used. Kepler turned from the holographic link and looked through his own viewport. Before him stretched the debris of the greatest empire ever built, burning, collapsing into itself, until only dust and light remained. "Status?" he murmured. A young lieutenant replied, voice tight. "All detonations confirmed. 97% synchronization. The rest are drifting beyond range." Kepler nodded. "Let them drift. The universe deserves reminders." The officer hesitated. "Sir, the Emperor's palace?" "Gone," Kepler said quietly. "As it had to be." Silence filled the bridge. The hum of the engines sounded like the beating of a heart. After a long moment, Kepler exhaled and sat down. His hands trembled faintly around his tea. "I remember," he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. "When we thought war was noise, gunfire, shouting, triumph. Turns out, it's just the absence of music afterward." No one answered. Outside, the last fragments of the Imperial fleet drifted through a haze of dying stars. In their place, the human vessels spread out, silent, coordinated, efficient. They didn't loot or occupy. They simply mapped the void, marking the borders of what was now gone. The comms officer spoke suddenly. "Sir, incoming signal, from survivors. Multiple channels." Kepler frowned. "Survivors?" "Refugee ships, sir. Civilians. They're broadcasting surrender protocols." He rose slowly. "Patch them through." The holographic display filled with faces, alien, terrified, pleading. "We were not part of the purge," one cried. "We only served. We'll obey. Please." Kepler studied them for a long moment, eyes unreadable. "Do you know what the word courtesy means?" he asked softly. The alien nodded weakly. "Mercy?" "Not quite," Kepler said. "It means doing something unpleasant with grace." He closed his eyes and gave the order. "Transmit evacuation coordinates. Bring them aboard the auxiliaries. Feed them. Heal them. And when they're ready, teach them what we learned." The officers looked stunned. "Sir, you're sparing them?" Kepler's voice was steady, but weary. "We didn't start this to become them." Hours passed. The wreckage cooled. A single sun rose over the remains of the capital world, casting pale light through the void. On its horizon, where palaces once shone, only glass planes remained, smooth, shimmering mirrors reflecting the stars. Kepler stood before the viewport again. His reflection looked like a ghost. "You see that?" he murmured to his aide. "That's what guilt looks like when it solidifies." She hesitated. Was it worth it? He took a slow sip of tea. No war ever is. But sometimes the lesson outlives the teacher. A soft chime interrupted. The Eidolon's AI spoke in its calm, human-like voice. "Transmission completed. Final courtesy delivered." Kepler smiled faintly, almost tenderly. "Then let's go home." The ship turned toward the dim blue glimmer of Earth, the only light left untouched by the devastation. As it drifted away, the void rippled with faint echoes, recordings from the vanished empire's networks, all repeating the same human phrase. "Civility is a choice. War is our second language." Kepler set down his mug, watching the stars stretch into lines as the jump drive prepared. "We gave them silence," he whispered. "Now the galaxy will have to decide what to do with it." Outside, the last remnants of the empire faded completely, leaving behind nothing but the cold shimmer of rebirth and the echo of a species that had finally shown what it meant to be human.